But now let's talk about week 2. All right. Now, before I say this, I had a gut feeling going into week 2 there was going to be some chaos. Everyone was mentioning, it's a boring week of football. Oh, I might go do other things. This might be the one week where I actually go out and not watch football. And the second I started hearing that noise, I was like, it's going to get interesting. Now I didn't predict it would get as interesting as it did. It was pretty wild last week. It reminded me of something like the 2007 season, just compressed into a week. It was pretty crazy. All right, a lot of teams were caught sleeping, but some of the casuals kind of weeded themselves out, saying just a bland week of football. You know, there's an old adage saying no week of football is a boring week of football. I think that proved itself on Saturday. Let's talk about one. Let's start with this first game that I want to talk about, something I whiffed on my predictions. The Bulls beat the Gators in the swamp 18 to 16 on Saturday. Now I'm gonna talk about. I usually want to talk about the winners first, but I just had to get this off my chest. I have to talk about the Gators first. They didn't just get beat by the Bulls; they beat themselves. They shot themselves so many times in the foot they have no toes left. All right. Some examples: Napier called 2 pass plays when they needed to milk the clock. Possession that Florida had before USF ended up making that winning field goal. 2 pass plays. They could have ran the ball. Defensive lineman Brendan Brett. This man pulled a Jalen Carter and got ejected on the final drive on the game. I haven't seen something like that ever since the Florida player who threw the shoe against LSU in like 2020. All right, just terrible decision. All right, then that was right after their defensive back Dijon Johnson was flagged for pass interference. I mean, if I was a Florida Gators fan, I would have thrown up. Talk about penalties. They were terrible for the Gators. Billy Napier said it himself after the press conference 11 penalties for 103 yards. And not only was that just bad overall, but it hurt them in a plenty of key situations, such as the ones that I listed. Now, obviously, after that upset, there was a lot of uproar in Gainesville and just the state of Florida and football in general. Now, Florida Athletic Director Scott Strickland has publicly stated that they are on the Napier train for the season, that he's not going anywhere. So, despite the fact this is the official story, you can't help but feel that I'm stating the obvious here. The Florida Gators are a sleeping giant. They have the resources to be one of the best programs in the country. But Billy Napier just seemingly can't wake this sleeping giant up. And I understand we have the rest of the season. That's why we play the games. Maybe Napier will go on a crazy run. You can never predict things. But their next 4 games are at number 3 LSU, at number 5 Miami, home against number 7 Texas, and then at number 16 Texas A&M. There's a situation here where Billy Napier's out before November. There's also a situation where a lot of Florida fans have to eat their own words in a couple months. Do I think it's leaning more towards the disaster route right now? Based off the performance I saw against the Bulls? Yes. Do I think that I thought the same thing about Billy Napier last year at the beginning of this season? They ended up going 8-5. They ended up winning. They ended up having a good back half of the season. So things aren't looking bright in Gainesville right now. But if you're a Florida fan, I encourage you, have a little bit of hope. If football was so predictable, we wouldn't want to watch it. Now let's finally talk about the winning team. South Florida quarterback Byron Brown looked really good. 23 for 36, 263 yards for 1 touchdown, 66 yards rushing against an SEC defense, keep in mind. But this offense, especially led by Byron Brown, not only played well, but the defense played their part too. 7 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 interception. All right. And my biggest takeaway from this game was this was a great win, obviously. But it's not like a game where I think, oh my gosh, they just absolutely dominated Gainesville. They have reached their peak. All right. I think the coaches would tell you themselves they still have things to clean up for the rest of the season. Just like how I thought after the Boise State game. They did not play a A-level game and they still won. That is a good thing if you're a fan of the South Florida Bulls. They still have not reached their ceiling. So I think it's pretty clear they're the best group of five team in the nation. And can they get their third top 25 win at Miami this Saturday? That's going to be a game I'm going to be watching. Now going to the Midwest, another upset. Oklahoma upset Michigan 24-13 in Norman. I mean, just an electric atmosphere in Oklahoma. I mean, anyone who just watched the game will tell you they could hear it through the TV. Some takeaways, some major headlines. One, Mateer's a Heisman candidate. I honestly think he's leading the Heisman race right now. 21 for 34 for 270 yards and one touchdown and one pick, and then 74 yards for two touchdowns on the ground. Keep in mind, this is against a Michigan defense some people considered top five in the country. Even though they may not have the flashy 4 or 5 stars, which most of the time they do, it's the culture and the development they've set at Michigan. And then they look at Oklahoma's offense last year, despite the fact it was a different quarterback, a different offensive coordinator, and they came into this game saying, "There's no way they can stop Michigan, go against Michigan's defense." Well, they did. And looking back at this game, whenever I was watching it, rewatching, kind of looking at the highlights, there was never one moment I felt, and I think a lot of people can agree, most people will agree, where this game felt out of the hands of Oklahoma. There was never really a point in the game where Oklahoma was kind of like, okay, if we don't go score now, things are going to get dicey. There's a chance we can lose this. They felt in control the entire time. And this game right here against Michigan, this big win, was what the game against Tennessee was supposed to be last season. Before a lot of the injuries for Oklahoma last year and kind of just the collapse of just Jackson Arnold and that whole offense last year, I had a lot of expectations for how they would do that year. I said they were going to be a dangerous team. And Josh Heupel coming back to Oklahoma, playing in Norman, Tennessee won that game. And it was clear that Oklahoma needed at least one more year to get to that next level. And this game is exactly what the Oklahoma fans have been waiting on. But the question is, can the Sooners look back on this at the end of, not just at the end of the season, but within 5 years from now and say, was this a kickstart to a historic season, to another playoff run, to a national championship? Or are they going to look back on it as a game they didn't capitalize on? I think that's the biggest question. That's only time will tell. It is completely in the hands of this team. The destiny of this season is 100% in the hands of the Sooners. And of course, that's true for every team, but for some teams it's more true than others. This is one of them. They play their next game at Temple, which is kind of weird. I don't is what it is. I'm not going to say anything. For hosting Auburn and their former quarterback Jackson Arnold in Norman for, as of right now, a top 25 matchup. So we have some good football. And then talking about Michigan real quick, the biggest headline I heard, which I mean is for obvious reasons, was Bryce Underwood. Now, I felt there was a lot of similar to Arch Manning, a lot of people were putting Bryce Underwood on a pedestal really high in the clouds and then being mad whenever he didn't reach it. This guy's a freshman. All right, this is his first game against an SEC caliber defense in Norman. All right, and he's not a bad quarterback. He didn't even have a terrible game when you look back at his stats. It's just those who expected him to go in and beat that Sooner defense were a little too high, if you ask me. Just like I think they were a little too high on Arch Manning going in and handling the Ohio State defense in Columbus. All right, so I'm not concerned with Bryce Underwood. Maybe Michigan's breakout year might be next year. Maybe they won't be able to win those big games until next year. Only time will tell. I'm gonna assume that right now, especially with the way their wide receivers played. That was just poor. I get Oklahoma has a good defense, especially under Brent Venables, but that was just poor wide receiver play they had on Saturday. Their next game is against Central Michigan before heading to Nebraska, which should be another rowdy game. Big rivalry here, a lot of hatred, border war. Missouri beat Kansas. 42-31 in Missouri's home field, right? Now, if you had told me, if I had if you or me traveled back into the past to tell me right at the end of the first quarter that Kansas was up 21-6, Jalen Daniels had a touchdown on the ground and through the air, and this defense only allowed 6 in the first quarter and also had a scoop and score, I would have been like, man, Kansas has got this in the bag. They're coming out strong. They're going to silence that crowd in Missouri, and they're going to win comfortably. Fast forward 3 more quarters, Missouri fought back. They won the game. Bo Prabula was 30 for 39 for 334 yards and 3 touchdowns. Just an absolutely clinic and on the offense. And then their offense also had 100 plus yard rushers on the ground. This offense can kill you through the air or on the ground. Now, after their game against Central Arkansas, I was a little concerned about their offensive line. I'm not any longer. Then again, even though this offense looked dangerous, even though it was against a Big 12 defense, at some point you have to say that offensive performance can't be chalked up to anything other than that offense is pretty freaking good. So, impressive win for the Tigers. They move up to number 25 on the WG poll, like I just mentioned. Small note here. Army upset Kansas State 24-21. It's kind of crazy if you look at my Twitter post after Kansas State lost to Iowa State in Dublin. I asked, will the Wildcats have a 2024 Seminole type season? Will they go downhill? Right now, it looks like the curse of losing in Dublin in season opener seems to continue. I don't wish that on Kansas State, and they're probably not going to go 2-10. That was a heck of a fluke, statistically very unlikely. But as of right now, Kansas State looks like they can play football, but they just don't have enough to win. But you know what curse has ended though? Vanderbilt being bad at football. That's right. The Vanderbilt Commodores, the laughing stock of the SEC for years. All right, they're good at football. Clark Lee has done one of the most impressive jobs I've seen at a program and rebuilt this Commodore football team. Now, of course, they're not all the way there yet, but the fact that he's got them from where they started to where they are now, mind-boggling, impressive. Nothing but good things to say about Clark Lee. Now you may be asking, didn't they play Virginia Tech in Blacksburg? Last time I checked, at halftime, Virginia Tech was up 20-10. Check the score at the end of the game. Yes, Virginia Tech was rocking in the first half, but Vandy and Diego Pavia came out in that second half like a whole different team. They scored 34 unanswered points. Pavia threw for 193 yards, 2 touchdowns. All right, they had 260 plus yards rushing. 3 players had at least 60 yards. Cedric Alexander is going to be a name you need to watch out for if you want to be able to talk about SEC football. Cedric Alexander, I'll say it one more time. That's a dangerous offense. It's dangerous. Vanderbilt's offense, especially with Pavia, has always reminded me of a kind of a military academy style offense. Kind of a lot of options, a lot of running the football. But all of a sudden, I see them, opening up the playbook, airing it out 30, 40 yards down the sideline and making those catches. I'm like, whoa. What Vanderbilt team is this? Impressive win by the Commodores. Nothing else to say. Going into a crazy stadium like that, down 10 at half, and having that resilience and that culture to be able to come out the gate in the second half and saying, I don't care. Let's go play some football. My guys versus your guys will win this game. Impressive. Now, when it comes to the Hokies, they've lost 15 consecutive non-con Power 4 games since 2017. Questions are starting to be asked about Brent Pry and how effectively he can lead this program at Virginia Tech. I don't blame the conversations. I think the reason behind it's valid. I don't think you should do anything till the end of the season, but there's definitely some concern in Blacksburg, Virginia. Another upset. Mississippi State beats number 12 Arizona State 24-20 in Starkville. What a game. I was at the South Carolina versus South Carolina State game, and it was a TV timeout or something, and I checked ESPN, of course, because I got to stay up to date. And all of a sudden, I'm like, "Holy smokes! Mississippi State's up 17-3 at half. Like, where did this come from?" Right? And every TV timeout from then on, I'm constantly checking the score. Arizona State slowly coming back, slowly making it closer, and then all of a sudden, they're up 20-17 with under like a minute left. I'm like, man, what a fight by Mississippi State. What a close loss. It's gotta hurt. Refresh the page. Mississippi State, deep post route, touchdown. Basically a go ahead touchdown. They win 24-20. Nothing but positive. I just want to say a major win for Jeff Lebby and the Bulldogs, who hope to succeed against a very hard schedule. They do have oh wow, two cupcakes over the next 2 weeks. But the next four games are home against Tennessee, at Texas A&M, at Florida, and home against Texas. So can they build off of that momentum and get two more wins in the next 2 weeks and clean up their performance so they're ready to bring Tennessee to town and hopefully upset them too? I'm talking about Arizona State real quickly. Disappointing. Sam Levitt definitely disappointed me as a quarterback. I had him in I think the right in or right outside the top 25 or yeah, I had them up there. And honestly, it's one of those things where at some point it's a team loss. At some point I can't just say the wide receivers didn't play well. Sam Levitt didn't get a completion in like the first half or till near the end of the first half. Even though I had him as a top 5 quarterback in my preseason quarterback rankings. It's not where that defense just couldn't clutch up when they needed to. At some point, you just got to say that was just a bad performance. All right. So I think the message from Kenny Dillingham right now is, all right, it was a tough loss. We lost that game, but we got to move on. We got to learn from it and move on because we got this whole schedule of football to play left. All right, we still got 10 games left, and we can't let this cause a spiral. So they face Texas State at home next week, and then they go to Baylor the week after that. I think that game against Texas State is going to see how well this culture at Arizona State is. I think they should win that game, and then of course you're going to see probably an offensive shootout at Baylor. So these next 2 weeks, I think, are going to be a big tell for the resilience of this year's team under Dillingham. But just overall, just disappointing for Arizona State. But you move on, keep playing football.